Hey everyone, I'm photographer and filmmaker TK North. In this video, we'll be covering one of the most important adjustments you can make in photography, not only to control the overall color balance of your photo, but help to also control the mood of your photos. That of course is white balance. So after watching this video, you'll understand exactly what white balance is and also understand exactly how to get the most out of your photos by adjusting it. Understanding white balance in digital photography. So white balance is essentially the adjustment of a digital photograph so the colors appear more realistic, or how they should actually appear. Think of it as how we ensure the whites in a photo are actually white. As an example, sometimes due to lighting, the whites in a photo may actually appear slightly blue. So to counteract this, we use white balance settings to get rid of the blue cast. White balance can be adjusted in camera, but thankfully we can also make color balance adjustments after the fact when editing using programs like Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop. Next up, understanding that different lighting situations create different color temperatures. Although it's called white balance, we do need to remember that this not only affects the whites, but all the colors in your photo. As an example, if you're shooting outdoors in natural light with a very overcast sky, your photos will have a colder color temperature, more of a blue tone. Shooting in unnatural light, say indoors under tungsten light bulbs, we'd expect to have more of a warmer color cast over our photos, or under, say, fluorescent lights, we'd expect to have a slightly more green tint casted over our photos. These are all important things when looking at and planning your photography scenes. Next up, different color temperatures help convey different moods. The goal with white balance is to understand how it can be affected and then to use this intentionally. For example, start by adjusting to a more realistic white and then see whether this helps or hinders your image. It's not always we want perfectly accurate colors when trying to achieve a certain mood or feel. It is important to consider how color temperature is going to affect each photo and the particular story you're trying to portray from that particular image. The color mood created by white balance is really going to affect this. Adjusting white balance in camera. The first step for accounting for white balance is making adjustments in camera. Thankfully, most cameras do have automatic white balance functions, which typically do the job pretty well. But you can also explore customized settings by manually adjusting white balance. Here you can choose a setting depending on your light source. For example, if it's cloudy, there's a cloudy day setting. If you're shooting in bright sunlight, there's also a setting for this. Of course, the handy thing with white balance is that you can also always tweak this when it comes to editing later on. So typically for me, I do use the auto white balance setting in camera, and then any further adjustments I want to make, you can always make them later on in post-production when you're editing the photos. To achieve the best in-camera settings for white balance, there is a few important things that we really do need to consider, which we'll go through now. The first one is shooting in the raw file format. So setting your camera to capture raw files rather than JPEG images is going to give you a lot more options when it comes to post-processing. This file format preserves all the image data that's recorded by your camera's sensor and allows you to adjust white balance in post-production more effectively. Next up, aim for consistent lighting. So shooting photos with mismatched sources of light is going to make it much harder to correct or adjust your white balance in post-production. As an example, if your shot is lit with an incandescent light bulb and your subject is sitting next to a window where the overcast sky is also coming in, you're going to get half of your photo warm, half of your photo cool. It's going to be very difficult to adjust this in post-production and achieve a nice natural neutral white balance. Use a gray card to be precise. A gray card is quite simple. It's basically a square or a piece of material that's specifically shaded to 18% gray. It's not always essential for every situation, but great when needing true consistent colors like product photography or food photography. To set white balance using a gray card, take a shot with the card filling the entire frame, then go to your camera's menu. Select to set a customized white balance and set it by choosing your photo of the gray card. You can also use shots of your gray card to help fix your white balance in post-production. Last of all, don't overcorrect. There are many situations in photography where a slightly skewed white balance can actually really work in your favor. As an example here, you could be in a dimly lit street. You want to convey a certain mood. You may want to preserve the color of the ambient light rather than correct it. As a second example, imagine you're shooting a bright orange sunset. You wouldn't want to auto-correct that because it could remove some of this warm orange natural color and make everything look more blue. So this is where we can play around with white balance and understand what works for each particular photo. Adjusting white balance in editing. Tweaking the color balance of your photos in post can be as simple as adjusting the temperature sliders in Adobe Lightroom. Similar to your camera's settings, you can also choose from various options in the white balance drop-down menu. Here we have options for various types of lighting conditions, or you can choose to set a customized white balance by selecting a neutral tone in your image. This is when a test shot with a gray card would come in handy again, as it would serve as the perfect neutral tone. You can then simply copy those edits or that white balance onto the other shots in that set. Advanced ways to fix white balance in Photoshop. First of all, using the curves tool. Here we can make delicate edits to the overall image color and tone by applying a curves adjustment. Simply go to adjustments, then curves. If you come down to any of those three color curves, you can tweak color in the desired area of your photo. Next, we have using a photo adjustment layer. You can also make a subtle or quick color adjustment by using a cooling or warming filter. Click the adjustment layer icon in the layers panel and choose photo filter, then come down to cooling or warming depending on the photo. You can also make localized changes with layer mask or use a gradient map adjustment layer. To balance images with uneven lighting, we can create a layer mask to edit only select areas or make tonal shifts on a gradient. These are just further tools available to really experiment and explore the color balance in your photos. Last of all, experiment shooting the same subject with different settings. Here we can play around with different white balance settings in camera while shooting the same subject, ultimately to see how different white balances will really affect your photo. This is often the best way to really see what different settings do and to learn which settings work for different situations. All right, that's it from me. Remember, there's plenty of other videos from Adobe looking at other photography topics for you to master. I'm TK North. Thanks so much for watching.